Okay, Cal from the future here. I just finished recording both of the portions of this video. Um, a quick tip for just how to consume this much material, because I don't expect you to watch the whole thing. I'm going to try my very, very best to divide this up into chapters. You'll see in the video description, this will be on YouTube, and they should be visible to you there. I'd recommend, honestly, it would be best if you watch the whole thing, but I realize that that's not a reasonable thing to expect given how long this project is here, this video is. This video is divided into two main segments. The first one is about audio editing, and the second one is about video editing. The whole of this video, the purpose is not to discuss how you're doing these things on the front end of things, no recording, no creating a click track. That's not the intent. The intent is to provide an explanation about how you edit the video and get from recorded files into a finished product. I've done my best to explain this in pretty plain English, but if anything in this video doesn't make sense and it's even a slightly critical component of how you put this together, please get in touch with me, because I don't want you to be lost here and trying to figure this out and have nowhere to go. I'm happy to explain this information in a different way one-on-one with you if that's a better way for you to consume this. So I think that's pretty much all I have to say for the intro. Without further ado, I'm not going to say enjoy because it's a doozy, this video, but have fun and good luck on your project. In this video, I'm going to be going over how you edit your audio and your video for virtual performances. The first distinction I want to make is that you do them separately. Just as I recommend recording your audio and video separately on the front end of things, I recommend editing on them separately on the post-production side. So first off, let's go over the software we're going to be using. This video will be somewhat unedited as it's going to be really long, and I'm trying to get this out as soon as possible, so forgive it if it feels a little homegrown. So the software that we're going to be using for audio editing is called Audacity. All the software we're using is free software. It should work on anything running Linux, Windows, or Mac OS. Probably none of you are running Linux, but if you are, then that's cool. Right now I'm running Mac OS. I'm not on the newest version, but it will work on the newest version as well. So you can download it here. I already have it downloaded. It should run you through an installer program, and that will get everything installed to where it needs to be. That should be a fairly straightforward process. We'll go ahead and go over the video software we're using now too. We're going to be using something called Hitfilm Express, which is from a software company called FX Home. This is their website, and it should be up here. Never mind. Okay, here we go. Hitfilm Express. So this is their free version. This is actually a really, really well-made bundle of software here, and it's very, very, very versatile, and will get what you need to get done. This one does not work on Linux, but I don't think that will be a problem for most of us. It's available on Windows and Mac. You can download it here. Just a little heads up here, it'll try to guilt trip you into paying for it. You don't need to. That's just a suggested donation, and the idea here is to be free. If you feel like paying for it, then that's absolutely fine, and I have no problem with supporting a company like this, but that is up to you. So those are the two pieces of software we're going to be using. Like I said, Audacity will be for the audio, and Hitfilm will be for the video. So first things first, organization is something that we're going to really want to be very careful about. I have currently, mine are over in my Dropbox. Here we go. So these are the tracks we're going to be using. This is just a sample thing I recorded a couple months ago for the purpose of being a demonstration. One of the things you'll notice is that all my files right now are in WAV files. There's other types of files that you might have, MP3s, AIF, M4A, doesn't matter as long as they're an audio file, and it should tell you somewhere. I think there's a Windows equivalent to this kind of viewer here. It should tell you that it is in fact audio. And if people do not have their video and audio separated, you're going to want to do that. You can really just Google audio to or video to audio, and you should be able to do that even online without needing to download anything. If you use QuickTime Player and you really don't feel like that, there is an option in QuickTime Player. I can't open it right now because I'm using it to screen record right now. But there's an option up in the top menu bar where you should be able to save as audio only, and that will export it as audio. So that's how you can separate them out. You'll notice that there are many more audio tracks here. They're all just unnamed. These would probably have some sort of different naming convention. It really depends on a project by project basis. But there's many more because I recorded several different parts for each different video. So there's 2 baritone parts, 4 trumpet parts, and a click track. This is what I played along with. I would recommend that you keep that somewhere where you are aware of it. This could be your MuseScore track. This could be a track from just whatever your performers are playing along with. So that's very important. Another thing of note is that your players, if you told them to, will not be playing along with, they'll not actually be playing. They'll kind of be lip syncing it. So that's what's going on in this video clip here. Don't worry too much about that. This is that will come into play later once we're doing the video. So we're going to go ahead and open up Audacity. I have it over here. If you run on Mac and you're having some issues with that, first off, I would recommend trying to run it on a Windows computer because there are some significant problems when you try to run Audacity on a Mac. And if that does not work, there are articles online about how to get it running correctly. The issues you may encounter are that you don't get any microphone input, headphone output, that kind of stuff. You might actually be able to skate by without that if you're not recording directly into Audacity. So if you have a problem with that, get in touch with me. I'll leave my email in the description of this video so you can get in touch there, and you probably have my Snapchat or phone number. So let's go in here. This is Audacity. This is what it looks like when there's nothing in there. So there are like, 15 some tracks that I had here. So we're going to want to go up to tracks and add new. Now, mono track means that there's one channel. So think about your headphones, right? You have 2 channels going in there. It's stereo left and right, and mono is just one channel. So instead of a left channel and a right channel, you have one channel. I'm recording right now in mono into my audio recording program on a separate screen here. So many of your recordings will be in mono, and honestly, I would recommend importing them as mono. And you may notice that the Mac shortcut here is Shift-Command-N. So I'll do that more to save time, but this is where this is. It's in the tracks menu. The menu for Windows is also at the top, I believe, but it's just, it looks slightly different. So everything inside the software, though, should look pretty much exactly the same. To be honest, I'm not sure if I'm running an old version of Audacity or not, but I think we should be okay. So here we go. So this is our audio track here. What we're going to want to do is import some of our tracks into Audacity so that they're actually on the track. This is right now just an empty track. There is nothing playing through it. There's if you were to play this, you wouldn't hear anything because there's no files for it to play. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead. Actually, first we want to take a look at this thing here. You can collapse a track like this using this bottom arrow. You can mute a track, so this makes it so that if there were a file here, nothing would play. You can solo it so that if there's a bunch of files, this is the only one that plays, and you can turn them both off. This is a volume slider, and there's a better way to adjust this as the gain. There's a better way to adjust this. I'll show you later. And this is pan, so this is left and right. What that means is even though this is a mono track, it will eventually be played in stereo. When you export this file, it will not be a mono file, it will be a stereo file. So you're going to want to, we'll go over panning there later, but this is how you do that. That's, as you can see, you can go center, all the way right, all the way left, and anywhere in between. So, very good. What we're going to want to do next is you can actually, there's a couple ways to import audio. One of them is you can drag and drop. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and make this window just a little bit smaller. Put it over here. And I can select track1.wave. What's really handy about this one is it's already in mono. The reason you'd want to import them as mono tracks, even if they're in stereo, is because if someone's playing to one side of their microphone, then you're going to get something on one side of the microphone and not on the other side. So we're trying to avoid that, basically. So you can drag and drop these in, I believe, and that'll actually, yeah, I forgot that creates a new track. If it's not clear already, Audacity is not my primary software. I'm relatively familiar with it, but it's not what I use on a day-to-day basis. So you can drag and drop them in there if that makes sense for you. If it does not, you should be able to import audio. And again, this has a key command shortcut, and you should probably get familiar with these as well, because these will make your process a lot quicker. After a while, you'll get familiar with them. I'm not perfectly familiar with them, but a lot of them are very similar to the software that I do use on a regular basis. So for this one here, it's Shift-Command-I. I think it's something very similar on Windows. So we'll go ahead. I'll do it from here. And we're going to import track 2. So mine are stored up in Dropbox, and they are stored somewhere down here. Not July. Here we go, October. And import track 2. So now you can see that these are here. Something you might notice already is that you can see, well, for one, you can see when there's a file because you've got this blue waveform here. And you can also see that where these attacks line up, you can kind of see really by the playhead. I'm lining it up with that attack on the top. You can see it's way far off from here. So this is the essence of what we're going to be doing. This is the biggest portion here. Oops. Sorry about that. I'm not sure if you could hear that. Okay, I don't think you can. We'll roll without that. We'll see. I may need to sub in some of the audio here at some point, but until then, let's not worry too much about that. So, yeah, so your biggest job here is going to be to line everything up so that it lines up with each other. Now, this may look a little bit weird because see how there are, there's gaps here and everything. On some parts that you might have a 12 measure gap, and that can make it pretty hard to have a feel for where you are in the music while you're listening. So what we can do here is import another track, and I'm going to import click track. So this is the track that I played along with, and this is actually in stereo. When you import audio, it'll import it to whatever it wants. You'll have to forgive what I said earlier about creating tracks here. This is not something you're going to be really doing. It's going to create tracks for you. So I'm going to delete that, or close it, I suppose. I think it does. No, it does not give you a warning. So be careful not to delete things that you don't mean to delete. So the click track, if it's generated by a computer, will line up directly with the start. So it's a little hard to see, but there is actually a click right there. You can kind of see the clicks here. These are the measures, and you can see that the accented clicks are the downbeat. So I can actually visually see where the measures are. Up here, this is another way to keep track of where you are. If you kind of see where my mouse is, this is the seconds, I believe, and then it goes into minutes. So you can keep track that way. This is it's not really a music editor. It's more of just a general audio editor. So there's not an audio, or sorry, a metronome, like a click, like a meter here. So that's that. What we're now able to do is kind of visualize this. We're going to just start with the first couple of tracks here. I believe that I should be able to move this. There we go. Yeah, so you kind of have to grab it until you get that little fist little symbol up there. So now we've got those there. You're going to want to save this very regularly. I would recommend pretty much every time you do an edit, save it, because if you're doing, if you put 20 minutes even into working on this and then it all gets deleted, that is a very, very frustrating feeling, and you don't want to be there. So you're going to want to save a lot. Shortcut is Command S, Control S. Yeah, so this is just a little warning here. It's trying to say when you're saving, that's not the same as exporting it. So this is saved as an Audacity project file, right? And an Audacity project file is not something that you can play, and it's not something that you can send to other people to play. So if you were to like text an Audacity file to someone, they can't play it on their phone. The only way to do that is you have to export a data folder and stuff. It's nothing you want to mess with. So we're going to talk about exporting later once we have, even just a bare bones of something that's lined up here. So this is just a warning. Don't worry about that. It's okay. And now we can save it as whatever we want. I'm going to save it on my desktop as demo project. It really doesn't matter as long as you know what it is, and you're going to want AUP. I don't think there should be another option. And yeah, save it somewhere where you'll remember, and save it as with a title that you'll remember. So now it's saved, and we won't have to go through that every time. It should be anytime you make a change, you can just Command S. Super simple stuff. So there's no excuse really to not save, and I really, really recommend that you do that all the time. So what we're going to do next is look a little bit about how to adjust where these are. Now you'll notice that if I do this, I'm not actually moving the audio track, I'm just selecting this. So these are divided up into what's called samples. So here I'm drawing out a range of samples, and samples has to do with basically what's happening at what given time. It's like a frame of a movie, but for audio. So if you have a, oh boy. So shift scrolling, if you have a trackpad, this might be a little more intuitive. Right now I'm using a keyboard and mouse. Usually I use a trackpad, but I'm adjusting here. So shift and scroll will be to scroll left and right. If you use a mouse regularly, you're probably familiar with that. And then to zoom in, you're going to want to use this one. So this allows you, wherever you're clicking, to zoom in. And you can actually, once you zoom in a whole ton, then you can see the individual little samples here. And they're like these little dots. So we're not ever going to really need to do that. And you can hold shift to zoom out while you're clicking there as well. And you can select a range as well to zoom into. So I could say I want to see just this range. Oops. Okay, that was a big mistake right there, y'all. Yeah. Okay, so at this point, I think I went a little too far with my zoom tool. Okay, so what we're going to do is the tool right next to this is called the time shift tool. And this will actually allow you to move where a file is. So this first attack, typically the way that I've done this is line up the first attack with beat 1. Now, you're going to probably want to move this out just a little bit, because sometimes an attack of an instrument is not right on the beat and there is a little bit of sound just before it, right? And you don't want it to be a very harsh entrance. So we're going to try and leave a little bit of wiggle room in the beginning. Now you can use, oops. Okay, we're not going to do that. But you can see kind of here that they're pretty close to lined up. So that's pretty good. We can do that with our second one here. And you can, there's a number of ways you can check. I keep forgetting in the program that I use, when you click here, then it just goes there. Actually, yeah, this reminds me, quick play enabled. There should be a preference for this. If you go to the Audacity preferences, where is it? If you can't tell, I don't use this a whole ton. So all right, I have no idea where quick play is. Quick play should not be enabled, but wherever it is, I would like it to be gone. There we go. Okay, so it's a right click. So now what you can do, maybe not. Okay, that's fine. That's fine. You can just check this and use it kind of as a ruler. So now if I were to, they're fairly lined up. So what I'd recommend is line up the first note. If they don't have an attack on the first note, line up something like a downbeat, because typically people don't get those as wrong as they do, you know, the E of beat 3. So line up a downbeat, preferably, you know, 1 or 3 or something. If they don't have any downbeats, then you'll just have to kind of do a little bit of guesswork. And after you line them up, what I'd recommend is, first of all, mute the other tracks, or you can do solo the click track and solo the other track, or maybe not. Okay, this does not let you solo multiple things, so what you can do is mute this. And then you can listen to it and see if the person made a start early, made a start late, because sometimes the first note of a song is a little bit off. So that's how we really make sure that this is, all recorded at the right time and everything is good there. Okay, so it might be a little hard to tell, but this feels a little bit, just a little too quick, a little ahead. And if you look here with these, so I'm lining this up right with that metronome click, which is perfectly in time because a metronome is unable to be wrong. You can see that it's a little bit off. So this is why we want to play it a little bit after we line up that first note so that we can make sure that it's actually, at the right time. So let's take another listen, and you'll notice that now this attack here is a teeny bit late in the front, but that's okay because the rest of the song should be a little closer to where it needs to be. Okay, so the recordings alone may not sound the greatest because when you're playing and it's just you, it doesn't sound amazing. And your click track is also not going to sound amazing. So don't worry about how it sounds right now. All we're focusing on is where your where it is as far as being lined up or not. So now we can mute the other one, and if you have a bunch of tracks, this may take a little longer to mute them all, but hopefully the general principle of this is getting across. So what we're going to do is listen to this next one that looks like it's pretty lined up, and we're going to see if it actually holds true for a little while. I'm only going to play it up until probably 11 or 10 seconds in here, just so we can get a general idea. If you really want, you can play it for as long as you need. No one's holding you back from doing that. So let's take a quick listen. Okay, so generally it sounds like this is pretty in time. There's a couple beats that are a little bit off, but the feel of it is in time, and you can, if you adjust based on one thing and it's wrong, and you adjust based on another thing and it's wrong, then you kind of just have to average them out and get it to where it feels right and feels a little more set in. So that is the general gist of how you align your audio files. You're going to want to repeat this process for all of your tracks, and that's pretty much how that works. So the next thing we're going to want to take a look at is how to clean up audio. So nobody's perfect. People flip notes all the time. Let's just say that this note right here, where you can see it's the second note, let's say that this is a whole note sharp, right? Pretty extreme example right there, but you never know these days. So we're going to want to use something called the envelope tool. And the envelope tool, as you can see right now, our audio level here is at 0, is what this is, I believe. This is the gain. This is not audio level. Let's go ahead and do this. We're going to go to View and go Open Mixer Board. So this is your actual mixer. And we can now see track 1, which you might want to name this to something else. We're gonna they don't really have great names, but you can name them whatever you want. So we're focusing on track 2 right now, but let's show the mixer board here. And the mixer board, what it shows is the pan. It shows your volume on the side here. It shows solo and mute. And then the other thing right here, when I play this, you'll see them moving. Again, I'm not entirely sure right now if you guys can actually hear the audio coming through my computer. If you can't, you'll have to just imagine. But this should be a pretty visual representation of what's going on. So we're going to have to open it so you can actually see there that they're on. You may want to split your screen so that you can have this over on the side. I'm just going to resize the main Audacity window. Oops, come on. There we go. And then we're going to just bring this up here, and you can make this as big as you need. This is a little extreme because you're not going to need this much control really. But yeah, the taller this gets, the more control you have over that. So that's how you see actually your leveling there. So anyways, where I was going with the envelope tool. Right now we're at whatever this level is, around 27, or sorry, these are independent, my bad. This is gain still. So this is the same control as the other one over here, but you can have a little bit better of a view of how this all works and a better ability to control it. So right now we're at 0 decibels. So that means it's not getting any amplification, getting louder, and it's not getting any quieter. It's not getting suppressed at all. So what we can do is we can change this so that it just starts out at here at -4.3 and stays there the whole way. Or we can set it up here and have it stay there the whole way. But what we can do with the envelope tool is we can actually adjust it over time. So the way this flows is left to right is by time and top to bottom is just tracks, right? Hopefully that's a little bit apparent here. But what we can do is you can actually see that we're able to control it. First of all, just here, so that's adjusting the volume. I can add another point by clicking, and we can adjust if it gets louder, if it gets quieter, and we should, yeah. So as you can see here, I could cut this note out entirely, and there's a number of ways I could do that. I could trim the track and cut out that portion, but I could also fade it out and fade it back in. So if it was a really long portion that was messed up, then, you know, I could have it set way out here and have it, hold on, let's grab these points here and have it be really quiet in the middle and then come back up. So this is the envelope tool, and that's what this does, is adjusts volume over time. And it's a pretty visual representation of it. I'm not sure if it actually changes no, it does not change the gain. So this is not the same as like automation, if you're familiar with other audio workstations. This just adjusts volume over time. Is it getting quieter or is it getting louder? And this is independent from this setting over here. And this setting over here and the setting over on the far left of the track is the exact same setting. So I believe if I adjust this setting, yeah, you can see it going up and down over there as well. Same thing with the pan. You can also see that over on track 2. It's the same thing. So this is how you do that. These tracks are recorded at a pretty good volume, I would say. This is about the width of these you're looking for. Something that should really catch your eye is if you see something that looks like rectangles. And I don't know if I have a track on here that looks like that. But if it looks like it's just rectangles and touching the top of it, that's what's called peaking. So that means that someone recorded too close to their instrument, or their instrument is too loud for their microphone to handle. So that would be what happened. I'm not going to demonstrate, but if I were to just scream in my mic, the audio waveform of what I'm recording right now would look like a rectangle. And that's not something we want, because that's going to distort the audio and make it sound kind of like really crunchy, is the best way I can think of to describe it. So if that's the case, that is a real problem. But if the waveform is just really, really tall and not necessarily, clipping out at the top, is what that's called, clipping, then you can just adjust the volume to make it quieter. You could use the envelope tool on the whole track if you want, or you could use the gain over here. And once again, gain is pretty much kind of like your, it's like your volume slider or your volume knob on your car stereo or your phone. So, the next thing we're going to take a look at is noise reduction. So noise reduction, so the noise that you might be listening for could be a number of things. I'm not sure if you can hear it right now, but I do have a vent going in my room, and that might or might not be picked up by the mic. I can hear it, but the mic might not be able to. Forgive me. You might also hear something like a hum of an air conditioner. You might hear a refrigerator running, that kind of stuff. It's not just things that make things cold, I swear. There's other things that make noise. But Audacity has a built-in way to fix this. So I'm going to go back over, this is just the selection tool here that you can select an area with. That's pretty self-explanatory. I feel like we're going to actually real quick, we're going to go over these tools here. The other one here, this is the draw tool. I believe this is for drawing samples. You're not going to want to do this. I'll show you really quick what this does. Oh, yeah, sorry. Have to be very zoomed in for this. I don't know if you can hear my cat, guys, but she's kind of freaking out. Yeah, this is never really something you're going to be using because this will mess up your audio right here. This is not something you want to do. Command Z to undo, as with a lot of things. I'm going to zoom back out. Okay, very nice. The time shift tool we've gone over, the envelope tool we've gone over, the zoom tool we've gone over, and this is the multi-tool. This is a combination of them all. You can see now that we can see these envelopes, so you can adjust them like that. You can make a selection like this. This is just if you don't want to do it that way. I believe if you zoom in as well, it's the same thing. And which is it? There should be a key here to. Okay, not sure what it is. Oh, yeah, it's control, it looks like, is the zoom. So you can use that if you don't want to switch back and forth between these all the time. I'll just stick here with the zoom tool because this is what we're going to be using, I think. So what we're going to look at is our first Audacity effect. Now, the way that effects work in Audacity is they are what's called destructive editing. So it sounds pretty bad. What it means is that after you apply a change to an audio file, you applied effect A and then effect B and then effect C, and then you decided, no, I want to change how effect A is going. You would have to undo effect C and B before you can edit that one, because once you apply an effect to a track, then it changes the actual file. This does not apply to the gain here, and this does not apply to the envelope tool. But basically what it means is that the computer will have to work a little bit less hard to try and figure out, okay, I have to figure out how effect A will change the audio file, and then effect B, and then effect C for each individual little portion of this. So what you're going to want to do is really make sure that you know exactly what you're going for when you're applying your effects, and that you also have the effect that you're going for. So the effects are all located up here under effect. And this here should just be, you're able to add third-party plugins. Don't worry about that. You probably don't have any on your computer. I might have, yeah, there's a couple on here that you won't see, like Ozone Imager 2. You won't see that. You won't see Magnetite. These are just because they're on my computer already. Most of them are going to be up here. So the first one we're going to look at is noise reduction. And this is one you want to use very carefully. If you overuse it, it will sound kind of like a Skype call, very warbled, because a computer trying to figure out what is noise and what is not, and then removing it, it's not super delicate. So sometimes it'll remove things that aren't noise, or that might be like harmonic frequencies in your audio file, and that might remove a brightness or a warmth from an instrument and turn it into something totally different. So this is one where you want to be really careful with it, and you're going to want to preview before you finish. So the first thing that we're going to do is go ahead and select noise reduction here. And actually, my bad. So we're going to want to find a portion of the audio file that would have a bunch of noise. So right here, for instance, is an empty portion. I'm selecting the select tool here. This is an empty portion where they're not playing, but there might be some noise, right? I'm pretty sure in this one there's not, because I actually did fade it out into 0 decibels. This is not something that you would see in a recording unless people edited their recording before they sent it to you. So we're going to select this portion because hypothetically, if there were noise in this track, you would hear it most right here. So then what we're going to do, now we can go over to Effect, Noise Reduction. And what we're going to want to do first is click the Get Noise Profile button, right? And this window will go away. Don't worry about it. So Get Noise Profile. So now what it's done is it's analyzed this selection right here. What we're going to want to do is we're going to select the entire track here. So instead of just this portion, basically when you apply an effect, you're going to want to have the entire track selected, or however much of it you want to apply the effect to, right? So to select the entire track, it's pretty easy. You just double click. And now if we were to scroll over, you can see it's all selected. It's not just the stuff that's on the screen. And now we can actually go over to Effect and Noise Reduction. So now you can see this is not grayed out anymore. We've gotten our noise profile from right here. So it's going to say, okay, the noise that I'm listening for to remove from the rest of the track is present here. And this is almost entirely noise, is what it's saying. So I don't know how exactly what kind of code does this, but something does. And now what we can do is actually mess around with these sliders. So noise reduction here is going to be, here's how you're going to want to attack this. I won't go into crazy detail, is mess around with the sliders and use this button called preview. What preview will do is it'll let you listen to the portion that you've selected or listen to it. And hopefully you'll be able to hear then the presence versus absence of noise. And if it sounds too warbly, turn things down. So turn noise reduction down, turn sensitivity down, or sorry, up. You're going to turn, just mess around with the sliders is what I'm trying to say. Frequency smoothing bands. This is basically to try and have equal reduction of noise across all different frequencies. And when I say frequencies, I'm referring to, like pitch versus a low pitch or a really high pitch. So this is more bands is going to be a little smoother, kind of. That's the most basic way to explain it. So once you've got the effect that you want, if you previewed it, make sure you preview it before you hit save and hit OK here. Then you can actually render it into the file. So this will change this file. It won't change the file outside of Audacity, but it will change the one inside of Audacity. So if you wanted to undo this, I think you can undo it via Command-Z. And if you can't, then you have to re-import the file and redo everything. So this is why you really, really, really need to preview it before you export. That's like the most important thing about applying effects. So aim for a really natural sound. Just get it as normal sounding as you can. And really you're focusing on, is there noise? Is there not noise? Or is there less noise rather? Because you won't get down to perfectly zero noise ever. That's pretty much impossible unless you turn the volume all the way down, but that doesn't help anything because then you can't hear. So once you're done tweaking it, I'm not going to go over the whole tweaking process. And also I'm pretty sure there's very little noise in this track, but once you've previewed, hit OK. And a window may pop up there. That's just rendering it into the file. So now what the computer's done is it said, okay, from this area here, the noise that I've heard here, I've tried to apply an algorithm to remove it for the rest of the file, for this whole selected portion. So that is how you do noise reduction. This is when you might need a little bit. Most recordings that I get are pretty okay, and I don't have to use this a ton. The other thing is if you have a lot of them, you can turn it down and it might be a little bit less work. The idea here is the less work it is for you, as long as it sounds good, the better. And nobody knows what goes on behind the hood, so you can really do whatever you want on the audio side of things. Video people can see, but audio people can't tell, like, oh, I flipped that note and it wasn't there. Or unless they're like a Sherlock. So Audacity comes with a lot of effects. I'm going to go through a couple of them here, and this is what we're going to be looking at for most of the rest of the audio editing portion of this video. There should be some chapters and stuff in the description so you can skip around. The first one we're going to look at is called an equalizer, and an equalizer allows you to adjust the volume for different frequencies, different pitches, and different, rather, pitch ranges. So, and these effects will look a little bit different on Windows than they do on Mac, but they should have the same controls on them and the same premise of how you operate it. So we're going to take a look at graphic EQ is the first one we're going to look at. So this is, again, you're going to want to select the amount of the portion that you're going to want to change. And for this, I don't think there's any point in selecting anything less than the whole track. So what this is it goes from low in the left to high on the top. Flatten brings them back to where they were. So if I bring a couple of these around and I click flatten, that brings it back to where it was. Invert, basically, if I have one up and one down, and I hit invert, that will change them. So these are just, to get you around where you need to go. So we're going to go over a little bit of what these different frequencies mean. This is like the most important plugin, and you're going to want to do this for, depending on how much quality you want to get out of this, you're going to want to do this on a lot of your tracks. And sometimes it could be pretty easy with just, removing some of these bad frequencies or boosting some of the good ones. And for some of them, it could be more complex, like it's getting a really, really low sound and there's no brightness to it. This is how you're able to change that. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at how these work. So the lower frequencies, as I've said, are on the left. So this is the very lowest. They're divided up into bands, and it doesn't actually specify what they are, but these are their ranges, basically. So this could start at 0 hertz, which is like vibrations per second, kind of, up to 100 or something. And if your track is particularly boomy, so if you hear, well, I don't know if I'm able to get that sound quite out of my mic, but if there's booming sounds in there that don't need to be there, those are going to be your lower frequencies. And it does. If you hover over these, so this is 25 hertz. So pretty much none of your instruments will have anything below 20 hertz. I wouldn't worry about that. But after that, then you can kind of, make a little fade in. Yours may look different than this because for different tracks, there's a different amount of reduction that you need to do for different frequencies. So this could be something if your track is boomy, but it sounds pretty good otherwise. So the next case we're going to look at is if your recording is a little bit tinny. And if it's tinny, that could mean a couple things. That could mean the high range, there's just a little too much of that. But more likely, it's going to mean that you've got a little bit, not enough in the fundamental range of where the instrument's actually making their sound. So for different instruments, this is going to be different. So I can't give you an answer that's, infallible and you can use it for everything, but I can give you a guide on how to kind of find this. So what you're going to want to do is really listen for where these frequencies are. So for a tuba, it could be, kind of in this range. For trombone, it might be up here. For, bell set, it could be up here. And then there could be some brighter tones up here. Something that's very important to understand is that an instrument is, unless it's a pure square wave and nothing else, or a sine wave, sorry, then you're going to have some frequencies above it. And these aren't ones that you necessarily hear on first thought, but if you were to take them out, then you would really hear that the instrument changes in its quality of tone. And this is true for pretty much any type of natural sound. So my voice right now has, the fundamental tones that you're actually hearing, and you could put a tuner up there and it would hear those fundamental tones, but there's a whole series of tones above that are actually creating the quality of my voice or creating the quality of a trumpet playing. So what you're going to want to do is really mess around with this a lot. Listen for, how much. Really, there's no reason to boost this much. You could boost, up here, and this is probably pretty good to provide a little bit of warmth to it. But make sure you hit preview a lot. Equalizing, it's very, very case specific. This is not I can give you a magical set of values for each of these sliders that will work for everything, or even for every trumpet recording, or even for every trumpet one recording, right? This is different for every single recording you get. And based on where people recorded, how they recorded, what they were doing with their instrument, you can have a totally different set of parameters that you need to adjust. So be careful if you're removing too much of the high end is another rule of thumb. You want to be careful here because the high end is where you get some of the brightness. But there's very rarely, unless it's lacking in brightness, there's very rarely a reason to really bring this up a lot. More often than not, it's going to be too bright. 20 kilohertz is really high. This is around the border of like where the human ear can hear. And same with 20 hertz. 20 hertz is super, super low. barely a sound you could hear, and definitely not when you'd get out of whoever's listening to this. Whenever you're mixing stuff and doing any of this, you really want to, imagine that someone is listening to it not on, a really expensive stereo set or anything, but just on a device. So there is absolutely a benefit to just mixing it on your computer speakers, or your AirPods. Our AirPods may have a little bit of delay, but Apple earbuds, something like that. Something that a lot of people have, so you'll know how it sounds. And if you really want, you can listen to it on a bunch of different things after you're done with it. So you can see okay, this sounds like this here, but it sounds way different on this set of speakers, and I need to adjust because this is what a lot of people listen on. So that's just a little spiel about that. But let's go over some quick rules of thumb. A little bit goes a long way. There's no reason with any of these to crank them up this way unless someone's recording is super, super broken. Be careful removing too much of this high end. A little bit of adjustment, even this, you'll be able to hear a significant difference. And the lowest frequencies and the highest frequencies are pretty much inaudible to humans and don't provide much benefit, really. So I wouldn't crank those, up really at all, and you could bring them to zero and nobody would ever notice. But if you're getting really big booms, then yes, tweak the bottom end. And if it's really sharp sounding, not in the sense of, sharp by 50 cents, but sharp as in piercing, then you can bring the top down a little bit. Always do your equalizing first. Noise reduction, yes, you can do that first, but before you apply any other effects to a track, do your equalizing. And because if you have a bad tone going into another effect, then you're going to adjust that effect so that it makes that bad tone to where it kind of should be, but it's really just a rule of thumb to always do your equalization first. The other thing is that you don't need as much bass as you think, especially in this range right here. If you crank these up even to here, your track is going to be sounding very very muddy and it's really hard to explain in words, but hopefully you'll understand what I mean. If you don't, then you can experiment with this and kind of hear how that alters your sound. That's my biggest tip for every single one of these plugins and effects here is experiment, right? Adjust them. Even if what I'm saying is not making perfect sense to you, then just experiment with how the different sliders affect the audio is what you need to do. So that's pretty much how equalization works. Again, with this, you're going to click OK. I'm not going to click OK because I don't really want to apply this. So I'm going to click cancel. By the way, this does nothing. If it's flat, that does nothing. Think of these as versions of these, but for different pitches, versions of the volume sliders, the gain. This just means they're all getting no amplification or getting quieter. This means this one's getting quieter. This one means this getting louder. So yeah, really just experiment with these is what I'm trying to say. I'm going to click cancel, but you would click OK if you wanted to apply that. The next one we're going to look at, we're kind of going on a series of effects here, is reverb. And reverb, these are organized alphabetically, I think, here. So we've got reverb right here. Reverb is echo, basically. You might be able, well, it has an echo, but that's a little different. The echo here is more like you shout in between two really large buildings and you hear echo, echo, right? Reverb is more like you're in a church hall and you can hear it, fill the space. So reverb is something that can make or break your track, make or break your mix, sorry. This is something that will really improve your track like a ton. I keep saying track. When I say track, I'm referring to the track that you'll export at the end. If you don't have any of this, and you don't really want to apply this on these ones here, I think there should be a way to, is there a way to do this? Let's see. Okay, there might not be. Cal from the future here. With Reverb, one of the things that you can actually do, I know I said that there's no master track here, but what we can do is after we export our project, which again I'll go over in the future, what you can do with it is you can actually import the file that you exported back into Audacity, right? So instead of having a bunch of these different tracks, like all of them laid out here, you just have your one stereo track. It would look kind of like this. And then what you do is you'd apply the reverb to that track. So you can apply it after everything else. You could also, again, go the way that I said, but this is up to you. I recommend the way I just mentioned, because that will probably be a little bit easier and you'll get a very more uniform approach to it, a more uniform sound. So that's Cal from the future's message. So the good news is that there is a preset function here. So what we can do is once we find, say this is a setting on here that I really like, then I can actually say save preset and call it whatever I want. And then I can actually go here up to user presets and go there. The other thing is, yeah, this one could be really helpful for you. If you don't feel like this is something that you're capable of figuring this out, then you can go up to factory presets. Defaults is just what it's at right now. I believe that's just what it happens to be when you open up the effect. And then all of these are fairly, this would be, Cathedral would be longest. I think it's going from shortest like reverb time to largest reverb time. Cathedral will be very large. Vocal will be relatively small. And you can use these presets to your advantage so that every time you have to apply this to a track, then you can instead of adjusting the settings so that it sounds relatively like the other one, you can apply the preset and you can save your own if you find one you really like. Let me go really quickly over what all of these different sliders mean. And I have this written down because back when I had a little bit more brain power, I wrote it down. Maybe I did not. Okay, we're going to figure that out. So room size should be pretty self-explanatory. It's the size of the room. Think of this as you're physically modeling, what room you want here. So your room size is one of the ones you're going to primarily use. This is, of course, a larger room. This is, of course, a smaller room. I believe 0 would provide no reverberance at all. Reverberance is the amount of reflections is what they're called. Think of that as, if I snap my fingers, I can hear it reflect off of the wall. It'll be very quickly here because I'm in a smaller room, but if I did it in a cathedral, you might hear, a little bit longer of that. So that's what reverberance is. The rest of these, I would not worry about too much. Room size and reverberance are what you're going to use mostly. And of course, I really recommend using the presets. There's no shame in using presets because nobody knows if you did or you did not. It's pretty much impossible to detect like, oh yeah, that's the Audacity small room bright reverb preset. You're a cheater and you didn't do your own work. No one's punishing you for that. Use your presets as much as you want. They're very helpful. Some of the other plugins also have presets. The EQ does as well, but I'd recommend you do that manually so that, you get what you need to get out of that. Too much reverberance, too much room size, too much anything there will make it sound a little bit muddy and unclear. And it'll kind of sound like all the tracks are going together. A big mistake that beginners make with this is just going crazy with the reverb. And it might sound pretty good, but try it lower and see if it sounds good still. Because if it sounds like good to you when it's higher up, then it'll sound, and it sounds good when it's lower, like leave it at the lower value. That'll bring out more of the voices better because the mid frequencies are the ones that will get reflected the most, basically. Again, once you're satisfied, click OK. I'm not going to click OK, obviously, because I don't want to apply this. So I'm going to click cancel. This is, again, with all the effects, really got to use that preview button to your advantage. Don't try and blindly do this. The next thing we're going to look at is a compressor. And this is something that's a little bit more advanced. So a compressor, the best way that I would define this is, the way it's typically defined is it decreases dynamic range. So what that means is it'll make the loud parts quieter and the quiet parts louder to bring them all to a central volume. So there's a number of situations in which you could use this. You could use it for things like if someone's playing really loud at the beginning and really quiet at the end, you can use that to decrease the dynamic range there of the whole track. You could apply this one to a specific portion, by just selecting, this. I'm just going to leave it on here. Not even that I'm really exporting it, but let's take a look at Compressor. So Compressor is a little fun here. It has a little graph, and this graph is, you don't really need to understand it for this, but we're going to be looking at a couple things. So threshold is what it's saying is how high does the volume of this file need to be before the compressor, this plugin here, this effect, takes action, right? A lot of these relate to when does it turn on, basically. When does the compressor turn on? So the threshold here, the lower you set it, right? This is going, as you can see on the right side of the slider there, you can see the decibel level. And that's going lower. So it'll take action at -25 here. Or if the track is really loud and I only want it to take action when it reaches -8, then I can go up to here. So this is another one here. It takes a little bit of practice to understand kind of the scenarios where you'd use this, or rather how you use it. So my recommendation to you is play around with the sliders until you get the sound you want. So the noise floor here is basically the level at which there is no noise in the audio. So if I were to set this, to -70, if I say there's no noise below, if there's only noise at -70 decibels and below, decibels is a measure of how loud something is, then it won't take any action if it's under 70 decibels, basically. So it won't try to make that louder. Again, play around with that. The ratio, and you'll notice this will change how the graph looks, changes kind of the slope. The ratio is essentially how many decibels are compressed from any audio, which I can call signal here, that goes above the threshold. So the threshold, like we set. So for basically 2 to 1 would mean that there's, oh boy, y'all, I don't have the brain power for this, but this affects basically the amount of compression that takes place, is the easiest way to explain it, the amount of compression. And this is when does it happen? This is kind of related to the threshold. It's like the lower end of the threshold, not does it have to be this loud, but does it have to be this quiet? Attack time and release time. This is attack time is how long does it take before the compressor takes action, right? So it could be, okay, 0.21 seconds after it reaches -20 or -22 decibels, right? Which is 1 decibel above the threshold. After 0.21 seconds, then the compressor will take action. And the release time is on the other end of it. So it's how long does it take before the compressor releases or stops activating, stops compressing the audio. You can compress based on peaks. I wouldn't worry about either of them. The main things you're going to be working with is threshold and ratio. Again, this one does have some presets in, or maybe not. I guess it does not have presets. The defaults is just what it's at by default. So no presets here, unfortunately. Adjust the threshold and ratio mostly, unless you have like experience with this stuff and this is making a lot of sense to you. It can get a little bit trickier when you introduce other factors. Attack time is probably the second or the third, I guess, least complicated. Stick between, I'd say the 2 to 1 and the 3.5-ish to 1 range. You don't need this much compression, makes no sense. It will kind of create this weird ducking sound almost in your audio file, and that's not something that you need. So yeah, this may be one that before you even start editing, you want to take a look at just, how this all works. And there's nothing wrong with that. When you're satisfied, click OK. I'm not going to click OK. I'm going to click cancel, but that should make sense for you. So those are the effects that I'm going to go over for now. There's a bunch of others as you've seen here. If you really want, you're welcome to look at them. I would really stay away from change pitch, change speed, change tempo. Those are rather complicated. Some of the other things like repair and other thing, the noise reduction as well. They're both pretty. They can really ruin your track, your audio file. But we've gone over noise reduction, and that's something you will need to know how to use at some point. That's all I'm going to go over for now. There's not a ton more that you need to worry about in there, especially for this type of project. And it could be that the only thing you ever need to put on a track is, your reverb and just a teeny bit of EQ. You probably won't need a compressor a ton, but I thought I'd throw that in there because it's a pretty common plugin. So the next thing we're going to go over is mixing. So what you might notice up here, if you can see where this is right here, this is actually kind of like a master meter, right? Can I actually? Nah. So we're not going to worry about that. But this is the playback meter. So this will basically show you visually. I'm going to play really quick and just take a look at this and watch it move, right? So you can see it moving there. The very top here is 0. What's very tricky is the more tracks you have, think about it like this. There's more volume being pumped through into this master track, this meter right here, which you can visually see it. You don't want it to be, well, really, you don't want it to be going in the red. If I were to crank this up, I actually don't want to do that in case you can hear it. But around right where my mouse is right now, it might go up into a reddish color. That's pretty bad. Ideally, you want it to stay kind of below -6. You can get away with it being at like -3. These are, again, in decibels, I believe. Are they? Yes, they are. So yeah, be careful with that. The whole premise of leveling basically is you're going to want to make sure that this bar is not going especially above 0 or even touching 0 or even getting close to it. You don't want it up there. But at the same time, you don't want it at, -24, because then your whole track is going to be really quiet and everyone's going to have to turn up their speakers super loud to hear you. I don't think a lot of you will be working with more than, 50-ish tracks. That's a pretty high estimate there, but 50 is around the area where you need to use some other techniques in order to get this loud enough. Okay, so leveling, basically, your idea here is you don't want to go above 0. Right now, both of these, this one is not, but you can see they're pretty much around 0-ish decibels right now. We're going to want to move those down. The more tracks you have, the further down they need to go. Because the more tracks you have, the more audio is going through and the more audio your master has to handle. And if there's a ton being pumped through, then you're going to get all the way up to 0 and it's going to distort the audio file. So this is a subjective process, mixing is. And the idea here is to emphasize voices that need to be emphasized and bring voices down that don't need to be, a diva. So I don't really think I can go too far in depth with this. It's a pretty simple process of bringing things up or down, different elements, and really just listen to it. And this is not a destructive thing though, so you can adjust this as much as you need and change it throughout the whole thing. Don't crank them up too far. I would say none of your faders need to be at 0 or above, which sounds a little silly, but that's how it really is. So I could bring that down. A fun way to do this, maybe not fun, but a way to do this is start with all of your faders over at 0, and you can put all the way down, and then you can bring them up from there and work through your whole mix that way. So this is just one of many ways to go about mixing. Another way is you can set them all to fairly low and then bring things down or up. and then bring things down or up like together by the same amount, kind of to get your audio in your master viewer here where it needs to be. If you have any distortion at all where it's going above 0, that will ruin your whole track, and it will sound awful even to someone who's not like listened to this 1,000 times. So be very, very, very careful about that. The next thing related to this actually is panning. So this is what we talked about earlier, the pan up here and also over here. You have controls on both sides. Right now, all these are in the center. Don't go too extreme with this. 100% would put it all the way over to the right. And if you hear that and you just like play it while you can hear that, you'll get what I mean about that's too much. I mean, you could put this at 18% right and have it still be more separated. The reason you'd want to do any panning at all is because what it'll do is it'll separate out the tracks and make things stand out more. So don't go too far in either direction. A little bit of separation goes a long way. And just with leveling, it's very subjective. Do it sounds good to you, and it can also be good to have a second pair of ears to listen to it so you can be like, oh no, well that sounds like really off balance and it feels like everybody is over to my left or everybody's over to my right. And this could be another one where you can, take a break and listen to it afterwards. This is something that you need to do on headphones. If you do it on speakers, there's a very good chance you're going to take it too far into the extremes and it's going to sound really weird if anybody would listen on headphones. It's okay if you need to listen on AirPods and stuff, whatever works. Anything that's a speaker in each ear. And that is the rule of thumb for panning basically is, don't go too far. The last thing related to audio editing is exporting. So this is what I was talking about earlier. And exporting just gets your this file, which is an Audacity file, which you can't really use, into an actual file that people can play or that you can import when we're doing our video editing, which I recommend doing audio editing first and then video editing, but you can do it either way. In this tutorial, I'm going over audio first and then video. When you export your video, exporting your audio, we're going to be using the file format .wav, W-A-V. And it's very important that you have everything that needs to be on and everything that needs to be off. So my click track has a metronome and I don't want a metronome in the finished product. So when you mute it, it won't export in the finished product. Make sure none of your tracks are soloed. It should be pretty obvious if they are because you can see grayed out things. So I'd mute my click track. Everything else that I need on would be on. And from there, it's pretty straightforward. It's just very important that you make sure you have everything in the right place, everything that needs to be muted. So what we're going to do next is go into the File menu, and we're going to go Export as WAV. There's several different ways to do this here. You could export as an MP3. I wouldn't recommend it, just because a WAV is a higher quality file. So we're gonna go with WAV here. And click that. As you can see, it's already set the file type. It will set the name here up to whatever this is, and this probably to whatever place you selected last. So I'm fine with the desktop. So we're gonna click Save. And it says that the tracks will be mixed down. So basically, once you've exported this, if you were to open that file, it's not 15 tracks like you had in your Audacity file, but it's just one. It may have 2 channels because it'll be in stereo, but it will just be one track. This will not affect your file here, so you can export as many of these as you need. You don't need to worry about, okay, well, I've got to save a copy of my project before I export, otherwise it's going to mix everything down into one. That's not how it works. So we're going to hit OK. I wouldn't worry about these. These are just some tags. Don't worry about it. And hit OK. And now what we're going to do is really quick go over to the desktop, and you can see right here we've got demo project.wav. So that concludes the audio portion of this. The next portion, which will be coming up in just a couple seconds, for you, not for me. For me, I'm going to go do other stuff. But the next portion will be video, and we're going to go over, how do you get this audio file into your video editor and how do you get from here to a finished video that you can post wherever you need. Thank you very much for listening, and I will be right back with you. Okay, now we're going to move on to the video editing. Congratulations if you made it through the entire audio editing thing. If you didn't, that's also cool too, because I realize a lot of you probably don't have the need to watch an hour and a half of content, or however long that was, just on audio editing. I'm sure you were able to skip around. Hopefully you were. So we're moving on next to video editing, and this is an entirely separate process. Audacity does not have the capability to edit video. Audacity is specifically for editing audio. Theoretically, and I say theoretically, you could edit your audio and video together in Hitfilm, but there's a major problem with this. And that major problem is that Hitfilm does not have the same capabilities as Audacity when it comes to editing audio. So we'd use Hitfilm for the video, and we use Audacity for the audio, and then we can put the audio that we already took out of Audacity right into Hitfilm. So this is going to be pretty easy. First thing we're going to do is download Hitfilm Express. Make sure you're downloading the Express version. If you try and download Hitfilm Pro or Hitfilm Regular, whatever it is, that one will cost you money. This one does not. It might trick you into thinking you do have to pay money. They might try and say it's a recommended donation, just set it to 0. They won't not let you download it. It says free video editing software. This is free video editing software. Wonderful program actually, and it's got everything that we're going to need for what we're doing today. So here's what we're going to do. I've already got it downloaded. We're going to go ahead and open Hitfilm Express. There's a chance this might not be the most recent version, but they don't change a ton in between. So if it looks slightly different, then don't worry. The same general, this program hasn't even changed really since I got it in 2016 or so. So the first thing that's going to happen when you launch it is there's going to be a couple things. Yeah, there is an update. I'm not going to worry about updating right now. It looks like this is just, it's nothing really that will affect our, it's nothing that will affect our rendering and our video editing right now. So I'm going to ignore this right now. Remind me in a week. So the first thing that we're going to want to do when you open this thing, you'll notice that this is not really a video editing screen at the moment. The way that they organize this program is that it's designed to be like all these tutorials, this whole community thing around it. We don't really need to worry about that. This has all kinds of cool stuff you could do. The great thing about this program is it can range. You can do anything from, editing a video of your family vacation to making a half decent indie tech movie, or not tech movie. I don't know what I'm talking about. You can do special effects, I'm trying to say. So when you download the Hitfilm Express, it'll ask you to create an account. Create an account. You'll need it to activate the software. It doesn't cost any money, and I think you can opt out of emails. I would do that if you don't want your inbox full of emails from them. And you can always unsubscribe after you're done if you're never going to use this again, and you can delete it off your computer if you need. So the first thing that we're going to do is create a new project. So we're going to click New up here in the top left. And what we're going to want is project settings here. So we're going to want, this does not matter a ton. I would recommend that you don't do anything over 1080p. Don't do anything like Instagram. I don't think 720p is a great idea. You kind of want a little more definition. You can do 30, you could do 60, you could do 29.97. I'm going to do 29.97 because that's what a lot of cameras film at, and that's kind of a standard. This does not matter right now. You can change your duration later, I believe. We're going to want to, this is set all right, and square pixels, we absolutely want that. So these are our files that we want. By default, this is the default settings right here with the 30 FPS. You can do that. I guess I'm going to do that just so that it's nice and easy here. So creating the new project. Off on a roll. So now I'm going to give you a quick overview of how this works. This is pretty similar to some Adobe software. I don't actually use Adobe software. I use Apple's Final Cut for a lot of my stuff, and I use Motion, and I use Blender. So this is a little bit different than what I'm used to, but I've familiarized myself a decent amount with this. So the first thing that I'm going to go over is this window right here. This is the viewer window, and you'll notice that there's 2 tabs right here. So I can click on this one, and this is the export. So we'll go over this once we're actually getting ready to export stuff. But for now, just don't worry about that. And the viewer here is going to be where you can actually see what's currently happening in your project, right? So if you've got all your videos in there, you'll be able to see them here. The next thing down here, the editor, this is kind of a timeline. So this is very similar to the main view that we've seen in Audacity. Audacity, it's arranged the exact same way. Left to right is time, and top to bottom is different tracks. And you can kind of see that they're a little hard to see maybe on this display or on this video recording. But there's little divisions here on these tracks. So you can see we've got our audio down here. This is master audio, by the way. And this right here, this line is the level. And we'll go over how to adjust all this stuff later. And you can see right now there's one video track in here. And you're able to rename your track. But I'd recommend you do that once we start getting stuff in there. The next window is over here to the left. And you notice that it's a couple of things. The main thing we're going to use is media. You may use text, and you'll probably use controls. History just, I believe, has a history of the edits you've made, so you can kind of see that. That's very handy if you're like, okay, I need to undo this stuff here. And you can undo and redo from there, or you can do Command-Z to undo and Command-Shift-Z to redo. Or on a Windows computer, it would be Control-Z, Control-Shift-Z, I think. I don't own a Windows computer, so if I'm wrong, I'm very sorry. I would research that before I ruin your project. Effects, don't worry about that. This is, I mean, unless you really, really, really want to spend, hundreds of hours on this and go crazy. I don't think you're making a Hollywood movie here. This is just the visual aspect of your performance. So don't worry about that. And controls we'll get into how controls works. Text is adding text into your video. You might want to do that if you want like some credits or if you want to have a title at the beginning. We'll go over how to do that. And your media. This is going to be where all of your files are. So your video files that you're importing into the timeline are going to go in media here. And that's where you'll be able to access them. You'll also be able to access your audio files from here, images, all kinds of things. So this is where all the elements basically are. Something to note about this video editor specifically and most other ones is they don't modify the files outside of the video editor. So they'll kind of like copy them into here. Instead of saying, you make a cut on this video file here, it doesn't actually modify the one in like on your hard drive. It modifies the one inside this video editor. So don't worry about destroying your files. You can always redo it. The trimmer we'll also get into later. Right now it's blank. A couple things to note. This is the default screen set. There's a couple other ways you can do this here. Workspaces is how you can change that. I'm going to leave it how it is right now because I don't want you to have to try and make the mental conversions as I'm going on. So we're just gonna go with this right now. First thing we're gonna do is go over here into the media tab. We need our project files so we can actually start importing them. And we're gonna click import. And now you can see this is a Finder window that's pulled up now. So we're gonna over to our demo tracks. And I want to import right now. I want to import these two and all of these. Oops, not that one. All of these trumpet ones. So these are all my video files that I'm using right now. And it says all supported media. Don't worry about that. That's just saying which ones you're able to select. This is a text document. I can't import a text document. So we're going to hit open. And it's going to load these for a little bit. I'm not sure exactly how long this takes. And we're done. Not very long. There wasn't a cut or anything there. That was... Okay, very nice. So what we're going to do is all these files there were just selected when they're orange. And you can kind of see a little preview of them up here. Now, these files, while they are video, 9 times out of 10, unless someone has edited their video, is going to have some audio associated with it. So we're going to go about how to do that. So the first thing we're going to do, though, is actually import. I like to use the click track to sync it up. So I do have over here on my desktop, this is the one that I exported when we were doing Audacity just earlier. But I don't actually want to use that export. I want to use my click track because the click track has a click to it and it makes it very, very black and white where beats start. So it's very handy stuff. So we're going to open that and bring it in, and you can kind of see how that looks in here. So what we're going to do now is we're going to click on Audio 1, and we can rename this whatever we want, really, but it doesn't matter. I'm going to create a new track, actually. So to insert track, and actually I don't need to insert a new track. We're going to delete that track. So we're going to drag. Oops. Come on. There we go. So there's our click track in there. Now, if I were to start playing this, it's playing through the wrong output right now, but that's fine. This is the click track that we had earlier. What you're able to do is to go back and forward a frame. I believe it's period to go forward and comma to go back. And you can see right up here, watch this number right up here. So you can see that number going up. What this means is the number on the very end here is frames, and then seconds, minutes, and hours. Frames are essentially, a video is basically just a big PowerPoint, is what you can think of it as, with just a ton of slides moving really quickly. It's just an image after another, after another, after another. And so frames are the smallest subdivision that we have here, I believe. I don't think that you can go into subframe editing here, and that's not really a thing that you need to do for this. So don't worry about that too much, but frames are basically the smallest unit of time that we have here. So next, what we're going to do is we've got our audio in there. You can actually mute tracks like this if you click on the little thing here. And with video, you'll notice it's got a little eye, and if you click that, then it vanishes. There's no video there right now, but if there were a video and I clicked this, then it would go away. So the first thing that we're going to do is insert a couple more tracks. I'm going to just name them what they need to be. So first one, we're going to call this one baritone 1. We're just going to actually call them something really short. So B1. Okay, and then we're going to go B2. Insert another track. And you can kind of see how this works. By the way, to rename these, I'm going right click on those tracks. And we've now got, let's do T1 because there's no other T instruments. But if there was like a trombone, you might want to do something like TP for trumpet, TBN for trombone, and TBA for tuba. It's all up to you. No one will see this other than you. And we're just going to put these in really quickly. Whoa, I guess I just renamed my track by accident. This is what happens when you're not paying attention. Not talking about you, I'm talking about me. T1. Gonna add another one. Insert track. It doesn't really matter what order these are in. As long as you know where things are, that's all that matters. And we're gonna add one more and call it T4. Very nice. So now we have a track for each of them. I'm gonna make a little bit more room, so I'm gonna hold this dividing line here and bring it down. To move around in here, you can scroll them. You can kind of see there's a little scroll bar at the side. You should also, not entirely sure, but not really. We're not going to worry about expanding the windows really too much. You can kind of move them around like this. So if I want a really big viewer, I could do that. That's up to you. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and bring in some of these files. Now, the video files by default, they're not going to start at the very beginning. Like they're not going to be perfectly in time. Because here, for instance, I had to start the video, before I actually, hit record or hit play on the track. The other thing is I'm not actually playing in these ones. So these should have some audio, and what you'll be able to see is that audio has appeared down here. So this is an audio file for there. Each of the audio files on here, including this master one, have this little line going across them. And what that is that's the level. So if I want to bring that up, I drag this thing up, and now you can see it go up a little or down a little. This would be super loud. I could maybe mute this, and now I can hear this. Give me 3 seconds here. We're going to see if we can. Options, it should be It may not be. Hold on one sec. We're going to see if we can actually, there we go. I'm going to just set my computer's output to my, the box that I'm using for my headphones. So now I should be able to hear this. I'm not sure if you're able to, but it's there. And you can hear it kind of going. And actually, you can also hear in there, if you could hear it, the click track. So this is where the moving by frames is going to be super duper helpful. So I've heard it come in there. I'm going to go just a little bit back, right? And then I'm going to go frame by frame until I can hear that first click in that click track. And that's how I know where the beginning of this starts. So we're going to... There we go. I heard it right there. So this is the frame where it needs to start. And I believe we should be able to trim it. Or we could drag it. Hold on. Okay, there we go. I lost it. There we go. So I believe it's the slice tool here. And we're going to slice that. And we should be able to, which is it? Control? Nope. Here we go. This just makes it larger. So now the first frame of that one there is perfectly on time. Oops, did not mean to do that. I meant to go back to this one. Slice tool is C, so that's very handy to know. I don't think I had written that down on my little script-a-rooney here. So we're going to go ahead and delete this one. And you'll notice here that there's this little link symbol. And what that means is that this audio file here and this video file are linked. Also, when you select things, you'll notice they turn that color. So just make sure you know that. We're going to zoom this out just a bit, and we're going to line this up right with the beginning. And now this will be perfectly lined up with the click track. So I could mute this and turn this on. So it should be lined up. You may notice, depending on how slow your computer is, mine is running a little slow because I'm running pretty demanding software. I'm running 2 audio editors and a video editor right now, so it's cooking. But depending on how slow or fast your computer is, you might notice a little bit of delay. That's fine, don't worry about it. So the idea here would be repeat that process of slicing where it needs to be and dragging to the beginning. If you don't have a click track there or something, then work with what you got to do. And we'll repeat that process for all of them. I'm actually not sure that I'm going to do that just for the sake of saving a little bit of time. And what we're going to do next is go on about how you actually edit your videos. So for one, you're going to want to mute the audio files that come with the video because you've already got them in what you'll import eventually with your demo, or it's not demo track, with your exported file from Audacity. So for editing videos, it's actually a pretty straightforward process. You'll notice in this viewer here, I've got a couple little elements right here. Number one, you can see when I hover over these arrows, I kind of get a little line there. Number two, you can also see that right here. And you can also see that I've got this central point in the middle. And I've also got points around the edges. And I'm going to actually, this is a thing you can do. You can, if it's going to let me, there we go. Going to expand this viewer port out just a little bit. This is not going to stretch the video, but it will expand it for me. So what I can do now is you can actually see that we can do this. Now, this is a problem, right? I don't want to be stretching the video by accident. So we're going to undo that. If you hold Shift while you drag a corner, right? I'm trying to squish it right now and it's not working. It's adjusting all the proportions at the same rate, right? So then what you can use this for is that you can adjust them to the right size. You'll have to really put your imagination to work here that I've got a couple more of these videos. And you're going to bring these videos to where they need to be. Now, you could, if you wanted, you could do a little bit of math. for this, or you could just eyeball it. The math that you need to know is that this is 1920 pixels wide and 1080 pixels tall. So then you could use that, figure out that this is also that same ratio of 16 wide by 9 tall, and try and figure out how small it needs to be, and then figure out what type of spacing you need in between. You could do that, or you could eyeball it. Personally, I like eyeballing it because that's just easier, but that's me. So for this here, what you can do is you can do this for, all your videos. I accidentally stretched it there. Did not mean to. Got to remember to hold shift. If you do something wrong, you can always just undo. The other way to change where they are is through controls. And this section under here, you'll notice that there's a little drop-down menu. This is the transform. So transform here, there's a couple parameters what they are. And we'll get to these circles in just a moment. But we've got what's called anchor point. And the anchor point, don't worry about that at all. Position is what actually dictates where on this canvas it is. And this is in terms of pixels, I believe. 0, 0 is in the middle, 0.00. And then, yeah, I'm not even perfectly sure what they are over there. Scale is how big it is. That's the parameter we were adjusting when we were scaling it up and down. And opacity, or opacity, however you want to say it. Honestly, I'm not sure, but this is the transparency basically. So you can set it to be, this is how you can do a fade in, fade out, but there's other ways to do that we'll go over. And rotation is rotation. We're gonna undo that. So that's those. The next thing that you can do is say that at different points in your song, you have videos that need to be shown and videos that do not need to be shown, or certain ones you want really big. Like you could put this video over here in the middle, right, and have a bunch of them around it that are smaller, or you could put it in the very middle right here and have people surrounding it, like if you have a soloist. So say that you want that at some points in the song but not at others. So let's say the beginning of the song, it's up here, and at this point, just a random point in the song, we're gonna go ahead and get that blade tool, and it should line up. Oops. I feel like there is a way to actually trim it. There should be, maybe not. I think there is. Let's see. There we go. Yeah, Command Shift D. It looks like. Slice. It was the option that I selected there. So then you can slice it, and now we're in this this portion of the video, right? So we can adjust the settings for this one, and this is technically a different video. So you'll notice now it's over here, and then we can scrub forward, and it goes over there. So this is pretty handy for altering where you want them. Something you need to be really careful about is where you make these cuts, and if you have a bunch of different clips, you need to make sure that they're on the same frame. Because if you have one clip moving on one frame and then 3 other clips moving on the next frame, it can look really, really off. So that's something to be a little bit careful of. Some of your videos may need to be cropped. We're gonna go ahead, oops, I did not mean to slice that again, but that's fine. No, it's not fine, we're gonna undo that. What we're gonna do here is bring this back to 0. Oops. Let's bring it to 0. You can type in values here. So I want it to be in the very middle and at 100% scale. There we go. Wonderful stuff. And you'll notice, again, this has a link. That means that the X scale and the Y scale are linked so that it won't distort. So what we can do here, actually, is we can tell it that we want it to, we can crop it, basically, is what I'm trying to say. For cropping, you'll notice there's a couple tools up here, and you're going to want to look for this one that says rectangle mask. So you can select the tool here and say that for some weird reason you really just want to see the ear, and that's it. Well, there you go. Now you just have the ear. Realistically, you would use this maybe if someone recorded in a space where there's like a background behind them that's really messy. Like say you really don't want this, whatever this is in the background. So then you can crop it to just here. and then you can resize that as you need. That's up to you. And you can again see under this controls thing that we actually do have some controls for the mask. And you can experiment with these. There's a lot that you can do. After a certain point here in this video, it's going to become, I'm just going to give you a couple little tools that you can use to embellish rather than, just get to the basic point of how do you put this video together. And that is totally up to you where you want to go, how far you want to go with this process. So actually, that's what we're going to start with now. I've pretty much given you the basics on how to import video, on how to sync it up, on how to put it where it needs to be, and put it places at different points in time. Actually, maybe before we do that, we should do a little bit of transitions. First, we're going to do keyframes. So keyframes are a very important concept to understand. So we've gone over how to move it from point A to point B. But say that I want it to go from point B to point C in a smooth motion, right? So we've got over here, I've selected the first frame of this clip. And what we're going to do next is we're going to say this little circle here will mean that we can actually click these little buttons here, and this should add a keyframe. So I'm going to add a keyframe for all of them. And then what we can say, and you can actually see that they've appeared here and they're up there. So then at this point, I want it to be at a different spot. So we're going to go ahead and we can actually manually resize this if we'd like, which I would like. So I'm going to hold Shift and we're going to do that and move it over to here. And you can actually see that it's included a little path for how that's going to go. So now what we can do is I'm going to go ahead and just make sure to, well, it'll automatically set which keyframes need to be set. But then we are going to go to the first frame and we're going to play this, and you'll see that it should actually take just a pretty nice motion. So obviously it's a pretty long motion there. Usually they'd be quicker than that, but you can see that that it's moving it there over time. And you don't have to manually say, okay, at this frame I want it here, at this frame I want it here, because it can actually do that for you. It can do that manually, or it can do that not manually, automatically. So the next thing we'll go over is transitions, which are another way to, make this to this a little bit less drastic. So transitions are actually over here in effects. I believe they are. Ooh, where is it? Transitions video. So this is the one part where Hitfilm does try to make you pay a little bit of money. You don't have to, and for most effects you don't have to pay any money at all, but some of them are premium effects. And you'll see that here where they say add-on. That means that if you want to use it, then you have to pay. It may let you use it, but it'll put a watermark over your video, so you don't want that. Cross dissolve is the most basic type of transition. It's a fade is what it is. So we're going to put that right in there. And now you'll be able to see it's over a number of frames. And the video is a little bit slow right now. As I've said, my computer is kind of struggling. But you'll have to take my word for it that that's a nice smooth transition, and we can actually take a closer look at that. And we can change the length. So if this is too long, then you can shorten that up a little bit and widen it up if it's too short. The other thing is you can do those in the beginning and end. And the beginning and end, if it doesn't have something to crossfade to or from, it will do a fade to black or a fade from black, because as you can see, the default background is black. Now, the other thing to understand is that this is a critical distinction from the audio editing versus the video editing, is that there is actually an order from top to bottom that matters. And that is the fact that if you want a background, it has to be the lowest down clip. So right now, B1 is the lowest down track. If I wanted to put a background one, I would add another one and then drag it down below it. You can just drag them like this and move them around. But that's where you put your background if you want a background. Next thing we'll go over is text. So text here you can add believe you can add. Yeah, you should be able to. I think you may have to, oh, come on, where is it? There we go. Sorry, forgot about it. Right here is the text tool. And now you can actually type something. And then here's where you control how that works. So I can say I want it there. That's all good, cool, nice, wonderful. And it should show up on that track that I selected. So now you can see the text there. And again, you can adjust where this is. So you can see it's not on screen now. And then if I move there, then it is on screen. And you can adjust where that is. These apply with the same rules. You can add crossfades. You can add keyframes for where you want them to be. And there's plenty of other effects in here to dissolve and move things around. That's up to you. You can mess around with them. Cross dissolve is the most simple, elegant, and effective one, and really you can't go wrong with it. That's not a challenge. The next thing that we're going to look at is masking. So masking is kind of like a crop, but instead of just cropping to a rectangle, you can crop to other things. So we're going to select the clip that I want to crop in here, which is this one. And it's going to be Control M, and on a Mac that will be Command M. So we're going to hit Command M. And this is going to make it a composite shot. So everything should be set where it needs to be. So you're going to click OK. And now what you notice is this has opened up another tab in this bottom window. So we can always go back here to our editor or back to here. Now, this is kind of the track right here, and you can notice that there's a couple little parameters if we open this quick little drop down. So what we can do is navigate to this tool right here. And what we're going to do is, I believe it's a click hold. Yeah, click hold. So you click down and you hold down. And say that I want to go really fancy. I want to make this into a star, right? I should be able to make a star. So I'm cropping it, but not just to an ordinary rectangle, right? And you should be able to move it once you've created it and scale it, I believe, or maybe not at this point, but you can always redo that. And you notice that you can, add more points to it. All these have different parameters, including like the ellipse and stuff. But this is a fun little way to add some little goofy effects in your video. So with that all said and done, these are pretty much the main things here. There's plenty more in Hitfilm. There are thousands of hours of tutorials out there. With Audacity and Hitfilm, if you have a problem with it, you can always ask me, and you can also always ask the internet. This is how I learned to use software. It's super helpful because you just there's someone out there who has the same problem as you, I guarantee it, and they'll have a tutorial out somewhere. So what we're going to do next is we're going to look about exporting. So that you notice that there's an export window here. We're actually going to go File, and maybe not. Hold on. Sorry, y'all. Editor. There we go. Very important. This here basically selects what you're looking at. So the editor is the one that you need to be selected when you're exporting a file. And there's plenty of ways to do this. Export, but file is what we're going to use. So File, Export, and save it as whatever you want. I'm going to save it to the desktop. Click Save, and you notice in this export window that it's actually got a little cue saying how it's going. And we're at 0%, 1%, and this is going to take a little bit to render. Depending on what kind of effects you have, it could take longer or it could take shorter. But this will export it as a file that you can actually look at. Another thing to note is that when you have a composite shot and you're editing in there, say that you have, like we do, this shot here is actually scaled down, and you can kind of see it in this window. It's scaled down over there, but we made that mask and it looked like it was over the full screen. It's not, because this file here is over in that corner. So that will make it, all the effects that you apply in your composite shot are scaled to however that actual video is scaled. So it's basically like you're editing that clip, that file, right, inside of the main file, if that makes any sense. So this might take a little bit of time. So what I'm actually going to do is we're going to go ahead and suspend the exporting. And I'm not going to worry about that too much. What we're going to look at next is how we can maybe compress the file. So this might get you a absurdly large file. Let's find me a file here. If we just go into here, here's a file from a really long time ago. I'm going to just copy that and paste it. So this is a new one right over here. So this file might be really big. I'm not sure exactly how big this is. I think I did compress it, but it's maybe not. It's 1.75 gigabytes. So that's pretty huge. And sometimes if you're trying to email it, if you're trying to upload it to certain places, it won't let you because they don't want you to upload files that big. So to get around that, because you still need to upload it, we're going to use a software called Handbrake, and the website for that is handbrake.fr. This is, again, free software and very, very, very good. So find your file that you need to compress, which is what it's going to do. It's going to make it smaller. We're going to open that. And what we want to do is we're going to go under here, fast 1080p 30. Under video, this should be set, but you want it on H.264. And this will make a very, very small and maybe not even noticeable difference in your video quality. So this is going to turn it into MP4, but I really wouldn't recommend turning it into either one of them. And now that you can see that we've got that, it may have you click browse to find your file originally, but for me, it just opened up that window. And to start compressing it, what we're going to do is click start. And you'll notice it's going to start there, and you can actually see the file getting ready, loading over there. And this can also be super helpful because it will take less time to upload to YouTube and stuff. If you have really bad internet, then this will help you a lot because you can get a surprising reduction in file size. So I'm going to keep talking as this is exporting. But after this, your video is ready to upload and share. I would recommend you watch it 3 times over, because there will always be something you're going to be like, oh, I just uploaded it, but I see a thing I messed up. And it's better to notice those things before you upload it rather than after. Just a personal feeling there. So anyways, that's pretty much the entire process for how you're putting together the post-production for this video and audio. Something I can't stress enough. Oh, it's done. Cool. Something I can't stress enough is that we're going to fade to another screen here. But something I can't stress enough is that this is a very case-by-case basis. Everything that you do, it's not like there's an answer for everything that will always work. You're going to have to do different things for different projects. You're going to have to apply different techniques for different tracks. And, there's no right answer all the time. Whatever sounds good and looks good is good. And I would really rely on that advice more than anything else, is that this is, as long as it looks good to you and sounds good to you and maybe to one other person, then you're good. And don't stress about, being a perfectionist and getting everything to be tippy-top, perfect, wonderful shape, because it's not going to be. And it's a really long process, but you really got to pull through, and you'll do fine, really. Hopefully I've given you the right tools to put this together. If you have questions about it, please let me know. So I think that's all, and best of luck to you putting on your projects and getting this all put together. I realize that a lot of you will probably have very, very, very specific issues. If that's the case, get in touch with me. Just a heads up on that. If you send me an Audacity file, I can't open it. If you send me like one of these, like .aup, there's no actual audio associated with that. It's just like a text file basically, so I can't open that. So don't send that to me. Really, I'd rather you send me an exported file, like the one that we exported up here, the .wav. So that is all I have for you. Yeah, best of luck. Thank you for watching all the way through, and have a wonderful rest of your life.